This is just going to be a little bit of a chatty / opinion video based on an article and podcast from Beauty of Fashion. I'll link the original source material down below, and I'll just throw up on screen what the article looks like so you can read if you want to find. The article describes a few different factors that have led to a bit of a beauty slowdown, as in like a market or sales driven slowdown. But beyond the business side, I also think there's a whole like rising issue or like underlying issue related to how brands have just truly like lost engagement and the ability to build loyalty with their customer. The podcast discusses several different things, including the sheer volume of product and brands possibly leading to market saturation, the obsession with product newness, continuous price rises, and the way retail shifted from traditional department stores into more specialty stores like Sephora and Mecca. And now it seems to be transitioning like more so into the like fast fashion online places like Amazon and TikTok Shop. I'm of the opinion that brands reap what they sow, and they've collectively with retailers kind of created this environment of an unsustainable beauty industry. They've turned every single facet or every corner of the beauty industry into a fast fashion conversation, and it has therefore collectively devalued perception. Also, I am weaving in my own opinions within points of the article, so everything I'm saying doesn't specifically come from the article. It's just I'm also throwing in my view on their dot points, if that makes sense. I'd absolutely love to hear your feedback on this topic, whether you feel a little bit exhausted from the beauty industry and what you think is to blame. The podcast discusses how nearly all beauty brands are starting to have quite noticeable reductions in sales. It's impacting even large players like L'Oreal, and it's like really affecting some other brands where the Shiseido-owned Drunk Elephant experienced, I think it was a 65% reduction in sales in the last quarter. The podcast brings up how Drunk Elephant's focus on preteens might have led to a decline in sales because it sort of shifted the focus away from their core customer base. But I think any brand that starts off with like a house of cards situation, in this case Drunk Elephant made up essentially a fake list of suspicious ingredients to launch the whole product range. At some point the lies of that and the marketing holes start to appear, and they just run out of ways to fearmonger things and run out of ways to blame consumers. So if your whole brand starts on a foundation that is weak, it's really impossible to keep that going for too long. So personally, I think it's a combination of the clean beauty fiasco starting to expire, and then of course this focus on preteens didn't help the situation. There was a time like really not too long ago when brands would really focus on like flagship or hero products, and they would spend months and months, if not years, developing a following for these products. It wasn't a case where, Estee Lauder would drop Advanced Night Repair in January and then by April they'd be moving on to another campaign. That's just not how it worked. Brands actually believed in their flagship products and put tons of focus and energy into creating specialness around these releases. It was always a case where these products had sort of an aspirational status. Even if you weren't using it in the moment, you kind of eventually wanted to try it. So that way, if any sales came up or special occasions, you already had this inbuilt desire for these products because there was so much legacy around. This has now turned into a situation where nearly all brands are just focused on quick releases, and they rely on constant newness to propel sales. In my opinion, this is in no way, shape or form a mechanism of creating like a long-lasting brand. This is simply an illusion or a mirage of what success looks like. But once the ideas run out, then so do the sales. Like if you have no foundation, you have no longevity. Brands simply can't constantly rely on newness because, the skincare industry ultimately just doesn't move that quickly either. And people need to be given a chance to engage and use and figure out if they even like a product or not. All of this, I think, has eroded the value of a brand. And it sends a message that there's always something better, something newer around the corner. I think inherently we all know there's newness coming, but it used to be a case where you could buy a serum and probably rely on the fact that a new one might not be coming out for 2 or 3 years, if not more. This like cycle of releases has just lost entire meaning. And I think there are probably like pockets of genuine and interesting trends and products that come up, but mostly everything we see these days is just a fake perception. There's no like truly viral product. There's no truly beloved product. Everything that's viral and everything that's popular is just bought through like a false idea of social media marketing and advertising. Brands are just fighting amongst themselves as to who can achieve the trending product of that week, and they really only care about that week or that month or that quarter, then very shortly thereafter, everybody just moves on to the next thing. Now, with all that said, when this whole concept of like consumerism or like the fast fashion idea of consumerism, when that started, there was probably a consumer benefit. And at the time, there probably was a need for more transparency over pricing and also more availability of certain actives that we really didn't have before or didn't know that much about. So when brands like The Ordinary came out, for example, I think their efforts in terms of democratizing the beauty industry was something that we were all like thrilled to see, because in the moment it was time and we needed it. And I am a fan of some of these brands like The Ordinary, Naturium. I think they're able to still keep quite a unique voice in the market without just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. And I think K-beauty brands, as an example, have done such a good job at like democratizing sunscreen, giving us a great idea of what textures are possible, and while keeping the price points really good. But the problem is that this rationale has kind of created a disease amongst all other brands. So now everybody is trying to be The Ordinary or Naturium or the Inky List. It's like we should have pockets where there are selected brands that operate like fast fashion, but then there should still be tiers where like your mid-range brands, they focus more on certain quality or certain ingredients. And as you move up the ranks, there was more differentiation. But it seems like now all brands are just blended together, all racing to release as many products as possible with hardly any thought or care. I can't see how it helps the industry. It certainly doesn't help customers or consumers if every brand ever is trying to operate in every single category. It reduces focus on what they're good at. It reduces focus on who their customer is. And it therefore leads to the problem of too much market saturation, because it's now no longer that a skincare brand is skincare. They're also hair and body and sometimes makeup, or now makeup brands are skin and body and fragrance. So it's like this concept of rushing to be everything for everyone has just created tons of problems and completely fragmented consumer perception, consumer thinking, consumer trust. It's just harmed everything. Now, although I've been talking about The Ordinary in this case, I actually think they still do a good job of maintaining their core like hero range of products. So we'll often see The Ordinary go back to re-promote hyaluronic acid or niacinamide, because those classic products are still the core reason The Ordinary exists. I suspect that's why The Ordinary has been able to maintain relevance all of this time, because yes, they are a fast fashion brand, but they don't tend to lose sight on what actually made them popular in the first place, which I don't think many other brands are able to do as well. I'm just going to use Murad as an example, but they're a brand that historically didn't have such a quick turnaround of products. They're now constantly releasing 4 or 5 products at a time. And it's never just one new release. It's like a cleanser, a body cleanser, a serum, an exfoliator, like 3 or 4 different sunscreens all in one go. To me, they're an example and the exact type of brand that should be focused on like standalone multifunctional products. And I'm also not even convinced that brands like Fenty, which did such a good job at opening up doors within the makeup field, but then they've entered skincare with kind of half-assed approach. They've gone into hair care, half-assed approach. Just because a brand is recognizable, it doesn't mean that they then need to expand in every single category within like a year or 2 of them achieving status. The escalation is too quick and they're just leaving themselves nowhere to grow. And to me, these are usually red flags of a brand that might be in a position of starting to struggle, because the easiest way to gain sales is to release new products. But again, ultimately, they're going to run out of things to do if their core products don't resonate. I mean, we did recently see Rhode sell to e.l.f. for like $1 billion or whatever it is. And, I don't care about Hailey at all. She's not an influencer that I'm like drawn to. But I mean, one of the good things of that sale to e.l.f. was an example of a brand that only had a few products in the collection. They were really able to create a lot of hype and a lot of excitement around just a handful of selected products. And that led to Rhode becoming one of the buzziest brands on social. Now, of course, that was all helped by Hailey's status. And who knows if that brand would have done anything with those exact same products without her face attached? Probably not. And it's also hard to know whether this brand will fizzle out if they start to expand it too quickly. I guess only time will tell. And the other thing is, just to bring it back to the point about Murad, where they're dropping like 4 or 5 products at a time. I don't even know if consumers like seeing full collections drop. It makes it confusing. You don't know which product to try first. It makes it look a bit oversaturated even within that collection. So to me, it seems like brands are just wasting their energy, their time, their money, their marketing budgets and everything by launching so many products at once when they don't even know in the first place if that line will be popular. So like, why not just work on developing a product that you're proud of, that you know will work, that you know is efficacious, turn that new release into a flagship of the brand or a hero product of the brand, and then slowly build on that as the demand of extensions of that line come naturally from consumers. The Beauty of Fashion podcast also discusses the concept of the lipstick index. And this is where like small luxury purchases like a lipstick are supposed to be quite resilient against economic uncertainty. And therefore beauty historically hasn't been too affected by cost of living stresses. It does seem as though beauty has started to price itself out of the market, where maybe the price creep of beauty products is getting to a point, where like a lipstick or a cleanser, these things are supposed to be quite disposable. The price points are getting to a zone where they now are considered purchase. Personally, I'm not so sure that pricing itself has been a huge issue in beauty, because in some ways I think price points of like skincare and beauty products were always kind of more in that mid-range before the democratization of beauty started. So if you remember the times of like pre-The Ordinary and those sorts of brands, beauty products were never the cheapest thing to buy. They were always more or less like a luxury, especially if you were going into like a department store scenario. So I think part of the problem is that the market fragmentation and the oversaturation of products has just overall devalued the brand. So yeah, I'm not necessarily convinced that it's pricing itself. It's just the value that consumers place on brands and the perception of value has been damaged. And that's why people are considering pricing more than maybe they were previously. Of course, there are some crazy examples. Like I think Chanel is offering like $200 or $300 lipsticks, and that's, insane. And even their standard lipsticks are like $50 plus. Whereas before you could kind of buy those in that $30 to $40 range. So I'm not saying pricing has had zero influence. It's just, I don't think that the concept of treating yourself, which is what really the lipstick index was about, necessarily correlates anymore, because it doesn't feel like you're treating yourself when all brands are focused on quantity over quality. And both brands and retailers have built a psychology of where like buying one piece of something is now no longer really seen as something special. It's almost like we've all been forced into this thinking that we need to buy 10 things for it to be like a true experience. And as I talk through this video, part of this is targeting myself as a consumer, because I do get very excited over newness and I love to see what's coming out, and having a bunch of different products and things around. It's exciting to try different textures and scents and that sort of thing, but I've certainly noticed an effect where it just feels like brands are now just copying each other. There's no real effort at uniqueness. There's no effort in creating like an original purpose of a product. So it is shifting my association with brands and products as well. I also mentioned earlier that the podcast discusses how online retail like TikTok Shop and Amazon has become more popular. And they talk about how the replenishment side, how quickly it is to place an order, you get it delivered the next day, might be part of the rise of these platforms. And I think that makes sense to a point, because the Inky List, for example, released their new Exosome serum, and I've been curious to try it, and I went to Sephora to go get it. It was out of stock, which fine. And then I check again and check again and check again. And it's been out of stock for probably 4 weeks now. And I think the fact that some retailers don't have the best stock management or stock replenishment does maybe sometimes drive people online. So even when you're trying to support other retail, they're maybe not doing enough to help themselves maintain the demand of certain products. So that might be also part of why online platforms have risen so much in popularity, just the general availability. But I would sort of argue or maybe caution some brands that are now rushing to maybe appear on Amazon. I think they might have more like prestige sections on those websites now. And there is a risk of devaluing some of these heritage or prestige brands if they become too express and available too easily on platforms like Amazon. Even though these brands are a business, it makes me see them as a fast fashion business, and that then ruins my perception and reduces what what I'm willing to invest in them. So I think, prestige brands especially have to be a bit more cautious. The moment Chanel stops control of the relationship they have with their customer is the moment that brand starts to die. So these brands have to be extra careful that they are still curating the shopping experience, because that is the DNA of these brands. And they are the ones that really should be facilitating and encouraging more of a slowdown of the shopping experience. But that's just sort of my general gripe, because it was always a thing where if it was Mother's Day or something, that I would go to Chanel and get my mum a lipstick, and that would always have like an inherent meaning to it because it's Chanel. If they just start popping up on Amazon, like, I don't want that. That would entirely defeat the purpose, because it's supposed to be that little bit of extra effort in the packaging and the collections and that sort of thing that make those gifts or whatever it is that little bit more special than if they just arrive from Amazon. I don't know if I'm phrasing this properly, because I don't mean for it to come across like there's anything wrong with brands that are stocked on Amazon. I personally hate Amazon for what it stands for. I hate TikTok, Shein, Temu, all of these retailers. Like, I hate them because they are responsible for the destruction of more mindful consumerism. But I think my whole reason or whole point is that brands can't forget who they are. So if they're starting to become desperate for sales, then they need to figure something else out. They can't just become like everybody else. I think that will negatively impact them in the long term. I had filmed a little while ago, I filmed a whole video discussing the reduced sales of Estee Lauder. And in that video, I brought up the whole concept of agility and how many heritage brands especially have lost the ability to identify their customers and still keep like their products feeling modern and growing with their consumer base. But I think sometimes agility gets confused with abundance. And the point is not to be agile in the sense of releasing 30 products a month. It's just agility in the sense of still maintaining the brand DNA, but offering like a point of difference or some level of innovation that is just more current. And if a brand can't come up with something new when they don't have to always, then maybe they should just refocus on marketing their flagship and hero products and make everybody re-fall in love with the things they already do that are really good, and convey to everybody why that those original products are probably better than some of the newness that's coming from other brands. Overall, we're in this weird position where brands are both doing too much, but also not doing enough. And truly, I think trying to be everything to everyone has become the problem. Brands now have their eye on competitors, and they're looking at what competitors are doing, which markets they're entering, which product categories they're focusing on, instead of keeping their eye firmly on their actual customer. Anyway, I need to stop filming now because I'm going to keep rambling in perpetuity. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I would say generally I have a little bit more of a conservative view on beauty, where I did prefer it when brands focus on flagship products and we really got to know what these brands were offering. But you might think differently. Maybe you prefer having a wide range of products available. I'm really not sure. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.